Ladies and gentlemen, and all those in between, welcome to One Chuff at a Time. I'm your host, RonDog248, and joined with me are my other two hosts, Master of the Lemons.
Hey, how's it going?
And Crimson2091, Henry.
What's up, guys? And before we get started on this topic, I want everyone here to give a round of applause to Ronnie. He's uploaded twice since our last episode. Great job, Ronnie. Keep it up.
That's actually pretty great, I gotta say.
That is good.
I was gonna say,
One of them
Ronnie,
was 7 seconds.
I am devastated to realize that when I made my video the other day about the long birdie, that I called your username RonDog and not RonDog248. I knew I was missing something. Oh.
It's okay.
Look,
I'm glad I got to mention. I got a shout out.
No, absolutely,
I just watched that today. And I was thinking, because Lemmy, when you were making that, the whole time you're like, I apologize for this. If you are traumatized for this, I completely understand. And I was thinking, what you should have said is, you'll be compensated for your trauma. And then,
that's true.
Send everyone
have to give $100 payouts for everybody, or even more,
or whatever you make on the auction for the birdie. Just distribute it out to everyone. It could be
everybody gets like $2
per people.
Yeah. I need to leak DMs with Sam that I had where I sent him, "Hey man, I just heard the news," and somebody tweeted out, "I think Master of the Lemons has lost it," and then I said, "I really hope you find it soon."
That's true. I did receive those good wishes. No, I appreciate it.
Well, it needed to be said. I didn't want you to feel hopeless in that situation.
And I didn't. I had hope there because of you. Anyway, so all that to say, RonDog248 is your name. But anyway, so let's talk about sets. And I guess we should start by defining what a set is. Because it's kind of interesting. We use all these phrases in this community and kind of just assume everyone knows what we're talking about, and we all do. But somebody from out of the community, if we were to try and explain, like, oh, I made a set today, they'd be like what? Like, what's a set, And it's
because like a film set is like...
It's like a soundstage.
It's like a room.
Yeah,
like a soundstage. But then if you're talking like, oh, I made like a set with trains, like, oh, you made a circle.
Yeah, like nice. A train set, right? Which is also something we do.
It could be that. It can also be, track on your film table, and you're making an actual like yards or like a main line, or a loop of track, or something a lot of people have been doing lately, at least in the wooden railway community. I've seen some Trackmaster Tomy people doing it too, but making custom sets based on stories, kind of like with the Percy Takes a Plunge set and James.
Oh yeah,
Goes
I saw yours
set.
The other day, Henry. Yeah, you're Duck in the Diesel Engine. Pop Goes the Diesel one. I loved that.
Yeah, and that's exactly like I saw Percy number 6. There are three main people I'd been watching. There was Percy number 6, Sodor Productions, and I keep forgetting his name. It's Thomas Wooden Railway Story Sets and More, I think, something like that. Like we can either put I did it with his username in the video. I just put up his name because I can't forget his name.
I could put it in as like an AI voice, just like a robotic, like. I guess you can't say that anymore because now AI sounds compelling and convincing. But
just be careful.
Well, we can use Henry's AI voice. I have it.
Yeah.
Wait.
If Henry's ever gone for an episode, we can just make.
I was gonna say. Yeah, we've got him on the.
That's perfect.
On the sidelines. I
give you my permission, except only certain things that I'm not gonna go into here.
I'm gonna make Henry's AI say that his willy is quite large.
No, come on. No, that's not true. It's not true.
I was back to the sets though.
You would say the opposite of that.
Yeah. Let's keep going.
Yeah,
I had a thing. I was just thinking about it, like the way we kind of define sets in like the Thomas fandom. I think is probably closer to a diorama for like everybody else.
Yeah, diorama's honestly a good way to put it because
I like that
because it's interesting. What we do is so many layers detached from what the regular kind of movie industry does. Like when you're making a movie, you do a big soundstage and do like 20 or 30 sets. Then you translate that to Shepperton Studios where they were filming Thomas. And so now all of a sudden it's, you have this low table where you build these enormous, gauge 1 train sets, where you've got, scratch built buildings and engines and everything. And then you take that down even further a level to like what we do, which is typically like, I feel like the vast majority of sets that people build in our community is like, it's on like a 2x4 table or like a 2x6 table. And
I do 3. So my old table that I had when I lived with my parents was 4x8. It was just a 4x8 piece of plywood on a couple sawhorses. And now since I've moved, it's a bit smaller. It's like 3.5, a bit over 3.5 by like almost 7 foot, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I downsized a little bit. Yeah, it works good. It's good.
It makes a huge difference having depth. Because I know, like, there's a lot of sets that over the years, like, say, Roman and James are very good examples of people who have, like, a 2 foot deep table. Like, Train King James and Roman's TWR Empire. They both have that depth of table. And sometimes when Roman needs, like, a much bigger set, he'll, like, put a second table in front of it and create depth for, like, Tidmouth Sheds and places like that. Or make
a huge bridge of, like, a huge bridge that, because he has a long train that has to go completely off the set. And just, I did that recently.
I remember Roman back in the day doing shit like that, too, where you had to, like, have, like, an extension going off table.
I think I did that with my Rails. I think I did that with my Rails of the West most recent episode, because that was the first episode of that series that I've done on like my smaller table, and it's a series based in America, and American trains are supposed to be super long, so obviously they got to be long. And I'm pretty sure I did that, and I think I might have taken a picture of it, but
that's what's really interesting is that I see a lot of criticism, myself included, thrown at the TV series where people are like, oh, well, the Express shouldn't be 3 coaches. The Express shouldn't be 4 coaches. And then you look at the set and you're like, well, I understand you don't have unlimited space, but like you could at least do 6 or 7, but you really couldn't, because you can't judge based on how long the set is. You have to judge based on how long the offset runoff is. And that's it's really actually hard to do that, especially in season 1. Like, they were really, like, because they weren't filming the first 2 seasons at Shepperton, they had a much more confined space where the sky backdrop was, like, up against the wall. And so they really didn't have much runoff to work with at all. And that really affects how long you can make your trains. So, like, I've made a lot of sets where, like, I've always had a 4x8 table that I filmed on. And, you make a set on there and think, okay, well, this is cool. This is, this is utilizing all of my space. It has a lot of depth to it. It has a decent yard with a lot of sidings. And then when it comes time to film, you realize, oh my God, I now need to add on this, like, janky, like, other part of the set that has, like, a bunch of, like, curves, and, like, you have to bring, like, a fold-up chair over and stack boxes on it so that you can, like, lean, like, a piece of track on there so that you can get engines to enter the shot. Because at the end of the day, like, you're going to want to have an engine start out of the shot and then, come into frame and come into the yard. And so you have this whole runoff. When I was filming some stuff with Ted, with Oliver Duck, on his set, he had this, like, really long piece of track, like one of those, like, novelty, like, 2 or 3 foot long pieces.
Oh, he bought that at that America's Best store when we met up in Chicago.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think he did. And it actually came in, like, really clutch. And he just had it for novelty purposes, but I grabbed it and was like, Ted, this is perfect as a runoff. We could literally just, like, hook it up to the end of the set and just hold it and just have, like, Gordon and the Express or whatever run off of that and onto the set. So, like, that's kind of the strat. It's really cool.
This like, us talking about, like, this specific, like, problem or like, thing, it kind of makes me think of something else that isn't exactly, like, a problem for this particular person. It's just really cool how he does it. Sidekick Jason, like, back when I was on Twitter, I'd see his sets and you take pictures of them, as a whole, and he uses the Tomy engines, and they move on their own. What he'll do is, like, for a mainline set, you'll have all the scenery and stuff, and then have a whole. It would be one big loop, even though it's not supposed to be a loop, like in the grand scheme of
smart.
things. And then he'll turn it on. He'll turn on the engine, have it go all the way around, and then come through the set, filming it. And I don't know, that's kind of what that whole thing reminds me of.
Yeah, that's great.
Even though
so it's just automated,
yeah.
And you just film it at the right time. Like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
The run-on is such a pain in the ass when you start getting to, like, Bachmann stuff, too. Because
Yeah.
wooden is one thing, but because those are, like, not to scale, but they are, like, more of a realistic scale. The express coaches are really long.
Mm-hmm.
And also the curves aren't as tight as, like, wooden curves can get with their bogies and stuff. So, like, I've had experiences where it's just been such an absolute, like, it's been a mess.
With models.
I remember that one video we were filming, Ronnie. Like, I was making you sweat bullets because I was trying to get Gordon to, like, go out of frame. And so you had to, like, hold that curve. And it's like he kind of went over the gap and then back onto the table. And you're like, are you sure about this? And I'm like, Ronnie, it's just one shot, please.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. With model trains like HO, for example, you got. I mean, yeah, with the wooden trains, yeah, it's a pain to build a runoff off the table, and then sometimes, But I'm not really thinking like, oh, dude, I sure hope this doesn't fall because it's just a wooden engine. At most, like a piece of paint might chip off if it hits the ground wrong. But like with Model HO stuff, I wouldn't even be trying that because if that falls, like it's probably gonna break pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that always makes my like whole nutsack go right up into my body.
Yeah, no, I've been there, man. But
unrelated to the set thing, but yeah.
It's pretty wild, just like what like. Have you ever done that thing where, I'm sure this is a universal experience to anyone who uses string to pull their engines, but you can't see it because it's fishing line and it's clear. And so have you ever had it like on the floor, but you didn't notice it was on the floor? And so then the train goes shooting off of the table because you kicked it and didn't realize it?
Time.
Yeah.
All the
Definitely
time.
wouldn't realize.
It's just awful. It's an awful universal experience.
Yes. Yeah, all the time.
It's also shitty if you have like a piece of like clear fishing line and you yank it and then it just goes missing.
Yeah, I've lost so
I
many
have a
fishing
whole
lines.
spool of it.
And then I found it like years later. Like, oh, here it is. It's just been on the floor the whole time, and I just didn't walk exactly there. I guess. Like,
right. I mean, I have a whole spool of it. If it goes missing, whatever. But especially if I don't know. And then also the whole thing like. There are some times where I can't avoid it. Like, I want to make the string as less, like, the least visible as possible. There are times where you got to pull the string around the bend, and there's just no way of, like, hiding it because you got to lift it up a little bit. Otherwise, the train's just going to come straight off or it's going to hit, like, the brush or whatever you have on the side. I mean, something that my good friend RonDog248, I wonder what... Oh wait, no, he's right here. He's doing the podcast with us. But anyway, he taught me when I went to his house for the first time back when he did some wooden railway stuff, putting a track riser, tacking it to a piece of track, and then pulling the string underneath that. So if you're pulling it on a straight piece of track, that works. Like it'll stay close to the ground. It's just curves and stuff are a little silly.
Almost always, yeah.
I remember Thomas Mania 24, he would do, I mean, he's still kind of around. He does Wooden Railway remakes, and what he would do in some of his, I don't know, like he's, I know he was off in college for a bit, so he was, like, he would only upload, like, twice a year. Kind of thing, anyway, he, like, whenever you do, like, the Season 1 Gordon's Hill shots or something like that, where the curve at the top, he would use those thumbtacks to like pull the string along so you could still keep it to the ground, but then it wouldn't like mess up the train, if that makes sense. Which, I mean, that's a good technique. You know, I personally would use like clear thumbtacks to do that. But yeah, that's something I've never seen before, and I haven't seen since. I've only seen
if
him
you
do
used
it.
like maybe some really thin like kind of like brads, you know, like little like just black nails, then that might stick out a little bit less. But yeah, that's
Right.
like leveraging it kind of around, you know, kind of its own pre-created path is definitely a good idea. And there's a lot of shots too where it's just so much easier to just reverse the footage and just pull the train backwards.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then,
no, I do that too. Yeah, that's a good one.
So anytime I can do that, I do that. There are times where I need an engine for a certain shot to get around like a very complicated curve, and what I'll do is I'll pull it till the point where the curve starts, and then I'll stop the engine, but I'll keep rolling. And then I'll move the string to be diagonal with that curve it's about to go onto, and then pull from that direction, and then keep pulling, and then change the direction again to straighten them out again, you know, however many times I need for that set. Like, coming out of Tidmouth, that's, like, kind of a tricky thing, where it's, like the big station, you'll have, like, this big diagonal across the set, where the engine comes out of the platforms, goes down the diagonal, and then passes the sheds. And so it's, like, when they do a zigzag like that, typically I'll just do one continuous shot where I stop the train and readjust the string, and then in post I'll just cut out the places where it pauses, and usually people can't tell. They can see the string move, so that kind of takes you out of it a little bit. But the movement of the engine is so consistent and nice that I think I can kind of get away with it most of the time.
Yeah,
so,
no, like, sorry, were you saying something?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. But anyway, yeah, no, like, it kind of reminds me, well, two things. One, like, that whole thing you were explaining, Lemmy, like, that reminds me of that shot in Thomas's train where he runs around to the front of the train and then backs down to the train. It's like, you know, from us, it looks like he just runs around to the front and then just goes straight back. But somebody on Twitter, like, pointed out that I'd never noticed it before then, that, like, it was a fade shot, and it was like they did there what you were talking about, Lemmy, where they just cut out the part where they switch the points so he can back it down into it. But but then another thing too is, like, in the terms of reversing shots, like, I do that all the time whenever I need a train to go, like, on some points, and they go, like, off the points, like they turn, and but, like, obviously I can't really do that with the string unless I use, like, that special switch that turns. And I remember, so I reverse it, so it's easier to do. But I remember back, like, in, like, 2016, I didn't really know how to do that yet, and I was doing a Better View for Gordon remake, and I was doing the part where, like, Gordon, like felt strange and he pulled into a siding.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm like, what do I do here? Because at the time I didn't have those special switches where you can actually direct where the trains go. So what I did, I would never do this now, but back then I wasn't really, like, a huge set builder. I was really kind of like a huge use your imagination person. But anyway, I just grabbed what I could find and used it, and I used red Play-Doh to make it to where Gordon and the coaches would divert into the siding, and even that just barely worked, but it directed it to the track. You could tell the coaches wanted to go straight, but because the Play-Doh was there, it directed it to the siding line. And,
I used to do something similar where I would, like, and I still do in a pinch.
It looked so bad.
Well, I mean, it's like the premise is good though, but yeah, obviously it'd be really, like, it'd be very obvious, which is why, like, I've done, like, I'll tend to use masking tape where I'll, like, kind of take it and I'll bend it in such a way that it almost continues the curve, and then just, like, almost just kind of wall off. Like, say if I'm trying to get the train to curve down a switch, then I'll just wall off the straight with masking tape. But I'll do it in, like, a very angular vertical way so that it really does just kind of operate like a curve. And typically people don't notice that because it's the same color as the track and it's not too obvious, and especially because most of the time, you're kind of down at track level anyway. So if you're looking at it from the top, it'd be obvious. But using like a putty that was maybe the same color as the track would actually maybe be a better idea.
If you were Harold and you're flying over it, you would be like, "Oh, what is this? This is different," or something.
If I was Harold, then I do a lot of things differently.
This is different.
That's our Harold.
Like, remember in Tatline where he goes, "Good evening, chaps. This is different." Bye.
Where's Edward?
Spirals out of the sky.
Explodes. People.
That's our Harold.
When you guys are building sets, do you ever feel like you have to like compromise what you kind of had in your head to get the shot to actually work out?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah,
it's like,
sometimes.
There's what you picture, but I don't know. For the most part, I don't think I do, because like I think everyone builds sets kind of differently. For me, when I write a story, I see the whole thing beginning to end. Like, I see all the shots, I see how I'm going to frame everything. And so, because it is already made with filming in mind, I don't usually have to compromise, because I'll just build a set for that angle. And most of the time when I shoot a set, I'll move the buildings around within a scene. Like, I will move the track around. I'll do all sorts of things, because all of that is important is that the audience doesn't feel like the yard is changing. It needs to look, nothing should contradict. But there's a lot of things that you can change about a yard and people don't notice. Like, if you need two engines to be closer together for a shot, you could just move those tracks an inch closer. And yeah, that's a huge difference. In real life, that'd be like 10 or 20 feet you just got rid of. But people won't notice because they just saw this yard for the first time. They're not intimately familiar with it. And most people can't immediately tell when the perspective's wrong on something. So you can do a lot of cheating if you want to like tell a story in an expedient way.
The show did that all the time, or did it a lot.
Yeah, no.
Like, when like in Trouble in the Shed, when Percy wishes Henry to go back to the shed, all the close-ups of Percy, Edward, and Henry, like in the restored version of it, like the shot of Henry, he's clearly not on any rails, but they put him up closer to the shed so you could see the sheds, even though he was very far away from it. He was past the turntable at that point. You wouldn't have actually seen the sheds, but to make it look, more aesthetic. That's what they
exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, I find sometimes that when I recreate a set from the show, or maybe one, from the books, it doesn't always look satisfying. Like, I've made a lot of like recreations of things in Roblox where you have infinite space and you can do really whatever you want. And when you recreate something to scale, you'll often find that it's like, okay, well, this is great and all, but now, like, when I do a shot, I can see literally like half of the signal box and nothing else. Or I can see like one berth of Tidmus sheds. And it's like, you kind of, if you can with a set, I feel like you want to make things as dense as possible, because then you see more of the set in every shot. Whereas like if you had infinite space and you spread everything out a whole bunch, it would look really boring most of the time, because you just see like one track and part of a retaining wall. And I just think denser sets, especially when the tracks are at interesting angles where like you get all sorts of good angles and you see the yard from all sorts of directions, just make for better videos. So I try to make sets dense.
I agree as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's something that like you see a lot in Roblox, and even in like trains maps where like people are trying to make this perfect like recreation of like the entirety of Sodor. But the thing about the way they built it in the show specifically is that everything was so dense because it's not all connected for real.
Yeah, exactly. It was very limited.
Like and it's I kind of like the idea of like this densely packed like world. You know what I'm saying? Where there's just so much in every frame.
No, me too. I mean, that's the thing.
Sometimes it's not totally realistic. Yeah, it's industrial.
Yeah, it gives it that industrial appearance. Just having a lot going on, like you feel like this place is really inhabited, and you have to kind of fight for land. If you want to set up like a petroleum plant or something, like you're gonna need to like squeeze it into an existing town or city. And I love that. I don't love squeezing petroleum industries.
Sodor is not very big at all.
Yeah, no, it's not.
The island is not very big.
Yeah, it's 70 miles across. Like what is that in terms of like a state in the United States? Like, let me look
I have no clue.
What is the smallest state?
Oh,
I kinda feel like
Delaware.
Ryan
Delaware,
right now.
I think, is the smallest state.
I think it's Rhode Island.
Geography. Rhode Island.
But
Yeah,
Delaware is
makes
probably
sense.
not far behind. But let's see. So, how wide is Rhode Island? It's 37 miles across. So, okay, so Sodor's like twice the size of Rhode Island, maybe.
Rhode
Not
Island
even.
and a half.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Well, how wide is Delaware? Let's ask this question.
These are good questions.
Yeah. We're getting a geography lesson in this podcast, boys.
I
We
feel like
are.
we're learning a lot.
Yeah, Delaware is comparable, Henry. Delaware is like 35 miles.
Yeah.
But like, point is, like, it's if Sodor was a U.S. state, it would be like one of the smallest states. And I mean that's the thing. So everything on there. I mean, you look at a map and you look at everything that's packed onto Sodor. I mean, there's a lot of stations, but they're not that far from each other. Like, if you were to look at like the map, like, you know, I like specifically, I always look at the 92 the map because that's the one that Audrey kind of like was like, this one's accurate. All the others are kind of iffy. It's the one with like the green and the yellow and the orange like height gradations.
Are the ones that are like in the Railway Series Complete collection?
No, that one's confusing because it's got all the roads picked out in red instead of like the main line picked out in red, so it's very confusing to look at. It's the one that's on that 01 Salty on DeviantArt did a really high res recreation of. It's like the 01
gotcha.
Salty map. So
Gotcha.
that's the one I always use. I think it's definitely the one that's closest to how the books kind of intended things. And on that, they've got little squares that indicate, you know, kind of the scale of things. And one square is 5 miles across and 5 miles high. So you can kind of figure out, like, say, I'm looking at it right now. Marin and Kronk are 5 miles apart. Wellsworth and Marin are, like, 7 miles apart. Crosby and Wellsworth are 7 miles apart. So it's like, you know, it's not like these are huge distances, you know. I mean, the biggest distance between two stations is probably like 15 miles, and that's between Kildane and Kelsthorpe Road. But point is, like, you know, Sodor's dense. Like, it's not like you're going 20 miles until the next station. Like, there's just a lot going on.
I guess,
and I feel like you can illustrate that.
And I guess it makes sense, you know, like Sodor is supposed to be the place, or the Northwestern Railway is supposed to be the railway that still actively uses steam in its everyday operations, like for as long as they possibly can. And I guess Sodor would be a realistic place to do it. You know, there aren't very far. There isn't, because, you know, Flying Scotsman had 2 tenders because he ran long distances between coaling stations or depots, whatever you want to call them, and
Right.
in Sodor 1, you know, steam is still very prominent there, and there's going to be a lot more coaling areas. But then also, even if there wasn't, you know, there isn't really a lot of room to make them far apart from each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that,
No, there's not.
So
Like,
in a way, that
Scotsman-
makes sense.
Yeah, like, Scotsman could totally get from Tidmouth to Barrow without having to refill, you know, and that's, I think, definitely contributes to the way that things look on the island. It's interesting, like, I had something I was going to say that was more broad.
One more thing, Lemmy, is that, you know, I thought of, and we're talking about accurate Sodor maps, you know, obviously it's probably no contest that this one that you're talking about is like the most accurate one, but you know what I think, you know, is pretty accurate too?
What?
Remember the map of Sodor on the wall in the place at Entertainment? that was pretty. I think that was pretty accurate.
Didn't we shoot a video of me like reacting to that?
Yeah, there's one water tower on the whole island.
Well, that's fair. That's a conservative take on water towers. We don't need
it's
a
fair.
million of them. We just need the one.
Yeah, no, and it all comes from one gigantic well.
And there's one circus, like if there's a circus, it can't be anywhere but this place.
Yeah.
Here's a question about sets.
Yeah.
I'm curious about, because I mean, both of you guys have kind of seen like the way that like my set table is kind of arranged. because you guys have been there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about getting rid of one of those tables and making it just like like half of what it is now. Do you guys ever feel like scents should be dense, but like if there's too much space, like you're kind of reaching over it and you're cracking the shit out of your back?
Yeah,
That's how my old table. That's how my old table was, my 4x8 table, because I couldn't walk around the table like it could only really face the front of it because it was in a small area in my parents' basement, and it was up against the wall. Like, what it was originally intended for was for, like, my back in the day, I had my old HO or O gauge trains just run around the loop, and that, like, it served well for that. But to make, like detailed sets where I have to put stuff way in the back, it was rough. Like, I had to reach all the way over.
I've always had like a 4x8 because to me that's worth it. But you are right, Ronnie. Like it has broken my back many a time. I mean, not actually damaged it, but like I've just been,
It's like, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to do this when I'm 50 or 60 or 70? If
like,
I'm still making videos?
Maybe not. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, it's it depends on where you put things. Like, sometimes I'll make a really beautiful set, and then I'll be kicking myself for the direction in which I oriented it. Because I'm like, oh my god, like, it's a foot or 2 feet into this table. I should have made it right on the edge. There was no reason it had to be this far in. It would have been way more fun to film if I'd done it right on the edge, but instead I just didn't think about it. And so I think where you put it on the table, and also what part of the set you're actually going to be, like, doing the most shooting on is really the important thing. Because, like, with Tidmouth Sheds, right, like, you could build the whole set, including, like, the lead into the yard that you never see. But the truth is, like, really, you're only ever going to shoot anything, like, past the turntable most of the time. So, really, the turntable should be on the edge of the table, and then the sheds should be, like, right there, and then that'd be easier to shoot. But it sounds just counterintuitive, because you're like, well, I want to build the whole yard. And this is kind of the clash, right, is these different philosophies. Like, I know when Ted films stuff, he
goes all out.
He goes all out. Like, he prefers, because it's two goals to him. It's filming videos, but also he wants to model the island. Like, he wants to actually represent Sodor, and he wants to see it in front of him. And he might still have that goal, even if he didn't make videos. He just wants to see it, recreated. And so he does that first. And then once he has the set, he kind of lets the set tell him, like, what shots look the best. Because now that this place is here and envisioned, he almost approaches it the way that, like, a real photographer would go to Sodor and say, ooh, this is a good angle, or that's a good angle. And so he doesn't build the whole thing to face the camera. He just kind of lets it work itself out. And the upside of that is that it's a very organic way to do it, and you discover new angles that you never anticipated seeing, which is really cool. But then the downside is that sometimes those angles are really hard to get, and you are breaking your back to get them because you didn't build the set in a way that was conducive to filming a video. You built it in a way that it looks beautiful when you walk into the room and see it and think, oh my god, that's such a cool diorama. So, there's, like, I feel like everyone's on that scale between, like, am I modeling it based on how it looks from the air, or am I modeling it based on how it looks from this one shot that's going to be really pretty?
See, so, in my case, I'm definitely the latter. Like, I mean, one, I used to, well, actually, no, I can't really say that, but, like, yeah, when it comes, like, my sets and stuff like that, they are made, like, for videos. They're made for, stories or remakes or whatever I'm doing. So I want to make, it's kind of like going back to our last episode, Lemmy, like, we were talking about people who make these Gauge 1 replicas. Do you want to make them to where they look accurate, under studio lights, filming and stuff like that, like the original models were, or do you want them to look accurate when they're, like, out on a set table at train shows on display?
Exactly. It's the same thing.
And that's what that's kind of like my thing. Like, if you came to my house and watched me make a set, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of the time, they're not going to be super, super detailed, like, from afar, or, like, from, like, the whole like, grand scheme of things. But then from that one shot that I'm filming or etc., it looks pretty detailed. It looks pretty good from that shot. You know,
Yeah.
and that's what I aim for.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I do too, Henry, because like I build all my sets through the viewfinder. And Ronnie, I know you do too. I mean, you've got like, shout out to Ronnie with his insane setup. Is like when we shot that
The Gordon one.
yeah, what is it called? Gordon's
birthday surprise.
Gordon's birthday surprise.
It is. Yep, I remember.
Yeah, when we shot that, Ronnie had a whole monitor hooked up to his camera, so we could see on like a big monitor like what we were shooting in real time.
He's a very sly dog.
Yeah, devilish little guy.
Yeah.
Devilish little demon I was.
It really though, it's such a great idea. Like it's what the show did, because like they with these enormous sets, you've got the camera down on the set. But then, you've got David Mitton in the director's chair all the way back behind everything, like looking at like this TV screen that's linked to the camera, so he can see, what's actually being, what it looks like when it's finished on a 4x3 screen, like scaled up. And that really is the way to do it. It's like that way he could just give direction of like where to put the camera and what to look at, and he can see what it's going to look like instead of trying to squint. And it's like, it's not always easy to see clearly when it's on a small screen. Like seeing it on the big screen, you notice more things. So if you can get away with that, like it's absolutely the right move. I think like the one like way you could improve that, Ronnie, is like having it be wireless somehow, and then you'd really be like unstoppable.
So there's a way to do it wireless with that camera. There's like some sort of, it's like a baby monitor thing, but it was super laggy and it didn't really work.
Right.
Because I was like, I could do it to like my iPad or something, and that way I could see it at least on a bigger screen and I could move it around. And I'm sure there is a way to still do it wireless that way. Eventually I'm just going to get like a little rolling cart. and that'll be good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but you've got a good setup. But yeah, like
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, I'm proud of you too. But I think that like the philosophy for all three of us is definitely like build it so that it looks good on camera. And I think
Want It, Do It by Brian Griffin.
Oh, I forgot he wrote that book.
Yeah. Well, really you write it, but
that's true with all the empty pages. Yeah.
Yep.
I'd feel inspired personally. Actually,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, because I hate Brian Griffin.
That's fair.
But
He's not really cool.
I don't know if we can do this podcast anymore.
Why? Why? Because you're Brian.
I'm Brian Griffin's
stan?
biggest supporter. Yeah, I'm
You're his
subscribed to his
biggest?
Patreon.
You're his biggest
Yeah.
supporter.
I'm his #1 patron.
Whoa! I didn't know he had a Patreon. Why am I surprised?
Well, anyway, who do you think, like a thing that I kind of want to talk about in this video, since we're talking about sets and all that cool stuff, who in the fandom that can you think of that, like, makes good sets, or you think, like, is cool at it?
That's a lot of people. Let me
I think if we're talking like OGs, like Leo Kim Video, like really set like a bar. Like
Yeah.
he's always like, whenever you're talking like who really did this in the Thomas thing first, it's like, oh yeah, Leo Kim Video, like all of that first.
Yeah, because
Like,
He
was
did
so,
it
like,
before.
building
He did
super
it before
modular
YouTube
sets.
was a thing. He did it.
True,
Yeah.
He did
exactly.
it before. He did it before Magic Railroad, or at the time he made Mad Bomber the year Magic Railroad came out.
Was it
Well,
like
it's also because he
1999?
came into it.
Or no, yeah, he was probably working on 1999, and then it came out in 2000.
Yeah. See, that's wild.
Yeah,
But like he did, like he came through a lot of it with like a filmmaker's mindset because he'd worked on movies before too.
Yeah.
So like a lot of it was like, I know things have to be super modular because you want to get as many angles as possible, right?
Yeah. It was so cool. Like he built like a separate like close-up set for like when the engines were in the shed, and then it's like when he was shooting like the main like yard and and station and whatever. He like it just looked so cool with all the HO track and all the like kind of dark like ballast everywhere and the buildings that were all weathered.
I think he's also the guy that inspired a lot of people to put their Ertl engines on HO track.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely.
I think that's when a lot of people realized, a lot of these engines, like work on it or kind of fit on HO track, and
definitely
not
inspired
Thomas.
me.
Thomas had to be modified. And then he put the chassis on backwards.
Yeah. I had this really old, kit, which was it was like an old American tender engine. It was painted dark blue, and it was all die cast. And it had this tender with two, bogies on it that I could take those off and take off the wheels on an Ertl engine, and it slid on perfectly. And it was just so cool. Like, taking an Ertl engine and putting it, which Ertl, I mean, I didn't even have any of the track growing up. And, the Ertl engines, their wheels were really flimsy, and in general, they just didn't roll very satisfyingly. And then to put them on HO track and have them glide was the coolest thing in the world. So I did a lot of that. I wanted to do. I was so excited.
Watching Mad Bomber as a kid, that's what I did. I had a few Ertls that I got from my cousins, and I would do that. I would put them on HO track and all that. That's what I did.
Some of them were actually definitely capable of it. You could put Rheneas or Handel, Bill, and Ben. They all fit the gauge, and they do have very subtle flanges, so you can almost get away with kind of rolling them on HO track, but they fall off pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah. Percy, I remember Percy, Stepney, Diesel. Those were the main ones I would that I remember fit pretty good.
I had a Wilbert as a kid, and he had it too.
Yeah, but one thing that he got us to try all this.
Yeah.
One thing that Leo did on his sets that always has stuck with me in my mind is he had those black and white buildings on the sky backdrop, and I feel like that's something that we never really see too much anymore, is the sort of paper facade in the background, but it really does fill out the space. Instead of having a bunch of buildings,
you can get away with honestly I've been wanting to experiment more with using 2D stuff on my sets, because you can really you could make half of what's in your shot 2D and the audience will never know because nobody interacts with it. It's really all that matters is it looks good from the angle you're shooting from. And if you're mostly shooting from the same angle,
not remember, but I use these Cat's Meow wooden buildings. They're they're not completely paper thin, but they're blocks, flat blocks that have buildings that have building designs on them, and that's
I see those all over the place. Those are the perfect wooden railway background buildings because they fit the aesthetic to a T.
Yeah. Ron Dog, how are you today?
What? I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Henry. How are you doing today, old friend?
I'm doing good. Lemmy, how are you?
Good.
Oh, I'm in fine shape, thank you.
All right, enough dilly-dallying. Let's get back to it.
I'm glad we checked in. I was really...
Yeah.
We had to have the mid podcast mental health check.
Enough silly business. Let's get back to it. But Ronnie, you were about to say something.
I was? Okay. When it comes to set stuff, Leo is definitely a big inspiration for me, but even then, some of the more simple stuff in terms of set design is also just really interesting to watch. And it's also oh, well, that's cool. You can do a lot with not as much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So TARDIS rescue stuff, early TARDIS rescue stuff, there wasn't a ton of crazy detail in it, but the sets were so densely packed, it was still super interesting to watch.
Yeah.
You know
TARDIS Rescue is one of those people I was going to mention as someone who just does great sets, because they are dense and they use a lot of really interesting buildings, and it just has a vibe to it. I love it's either it's one of the Edward ones. It's either the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning, where Edward's in a big mainland yard with a fellow engine, a red engine from the Victorian era, and Edward is too. But I mean, this engine really looks it, and it's just a really dense kind of mainland set with buildings jutting out at all interesting angles and a big bridge or something over the tracks, and it's so dynamic. I love the way that looks, and in general I don't know. I love when people do interesting stuff with their sets. I mean, it's just so cool. I love seeing, especially when people depict the mainland, seeing it look really cluttered and busy and just, not quite as serene and simple as Sodor, because you think pastures with Sodor, you think like quaint little brick stations, you think fences.
I mean, they thought the same for the mainland and Journey Beyond Sodor.
They did, and they just didn't execute it very well.
Well, no, they were like, oh, what about a blue house? That would never be seen on Sodor. That was like their one gag. I remember.
I remember. I mean, back when Turtles and Thomas was around, he did a Journey Beyond Sodor review, and he said, dude, like that is not what I picture England as at all. It looks like the American countryside. It looks like he was like, and then he said it looks like Illinois. And I'm like, as an actual Illinoisan, that was way too hilly to look like Illinois.
That was too far.
Yeah. That was
when I knew.
It looked like what did it look like? It could pass for Pennsylvania, actually.
Oh, yeah. No, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, definitely. It was hilly. It was hilly.
Now, Illinois, honestly, the windmill could be in Illinois. Like Thomas's windmill in the intro.
Yeah.
That's...
God, I wish it was. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be cool. Ronnie and I would be going there every day.
Wow.
Just for no reason, just to go.
Just to kind of, just to watch. Just to
watch Thomas go by with Annie and Clarabelle at the beginning of every episode. It's like, hey, they're about to film another Thomas episode. Oh, dude, they got to do the windmill shot. So you got to go look at that.
God, that would suck if you had to, every video you made, you had to refilm the intro every single time.
Oh.
That'd be a lot of building that windmill.
Why? Just torture? Just
No, the windmill would always be there. It'd be there in the middle of Illinois.
I'm just saying, imagine, you're making, imagine, Henry, you're doing, a Thomas series, right? But every time you do a new episode, you have to refilm the intro every single time.
Nah, I'm not going to do that. I just wouldn't.
Imagine if Sodor was real, and you had people in this fandom that instead of, filming their models or filming stuff in trains, they would just go to the engines and, take footage of them, arguing, and then, they would dub it over with totally irrelevant text. You have James and Thomas having a huge argument, and then the dub is how are you doing today, James? Oh, I'm doing fine. How about you? And you can tell they're really pissed.
The alternative is two Thomas fans go to real Sodor and they argue. They film Thomas and James arguing, but then somebody goes home and makes the Thomas side, and someone goes home and makes the James side. You gotta have two perspectives to watch.
That's news at that point. That's not.
That literally becomes CNN.
That's funny.
That's funny.
For Sodor News Network with a C.
Or you go there and you try to film, and the engines are like, "Dude, get out of here!"
Yeah,
they've been around for however long, and they're like, "Dude, I'm tired." They just be like celebrities, They just want to have their own. They just want to have us, the Thomas fans would basically be like paparazzis to them.
Yeah, we literally would, but also the world would look so different if Sodor was real. I feel the show would be different. We'd have a different relationship with the franchise. It would be different. But yeah. What's a set that you guys have always wanted to build, but you've never gotten around to?
Croven's Gate.
Ooh,
no. Croven's Gate would be cool, but I'm sure, you guys go. I'm sure I can find a better one.
I don't really know. So when it comes to my sets, obviously, when I make, my, sets for my Thomas series, or remakes, I try to do actual locations, whatever, Edward Station, or Farquhar. I've done Farquhar for an intro, but that's it. But then I don't know. I don't really know. I guess it's not Thomas related, but it would be cool to do the big harbor in Theodore Tugboat.
Oh yeah, I would love. You've talked about that before. I'd love to see you do it.
Yeah, and that's something I might do someday if I do a Theodore project or something. It's been something on the back of my mind for a while.
I would love to do a version of the viaduct. Maybe not specifically the show one, but just a viaduct. And I've got kits for it. I just haven't done it because I'm lazy.
Yeah, no, that would be great to see. I think the top of my list is definitely Barrow Inverness. And a lot of my, like, the ones I really want to do are ones that haven't really been depicted properly anywhere. Because, like, I mean, there's some places that are pretty well defined. Like, at this point, I think I know, like, a lot of people know what Railway Series Tidmouth looks like. But, like, there's some places that you never get any meaningful illustrations of. Like, in theory, there's a couple illustrations of Kronk in the books, but not really. It's just some rando station, and you see, like, the edge of it. It doesn't tell you anything. And for a station with that population density, it's got to be really big and impressive and cool. And it's right next to the viaduct, like, right adjacent to it. So that's got to look cool. And there's a castle. And then as for, like, I think Barrow's at the top of my list because we have a lot of actual real track plans of Barrow and Furness. Like, we actually know how that place is laid out. And I can kind of see where the Northwestern line would feed into it. And Christopher's books kind of depict it like I mean, it like, they illustrate, like, the real station that's there. But the thing is, like, that doesn't really make any sense because that station, they would never have made that tiny, like, 3-track station if they were depending on working with the Northwestern Railway. Like, there's this whole rail network right to the west that exists now. Like, that would change things. Like, they would not use that new little station that's, like, post-war. They would use, like, the pre-war station, which is a lot cooler. And they probably would go along the coast instead of going inland. And so, like, it's kind of an AU. Like, it's not going to be... Barrow is not going to look the same when you've got Sodor right next to it to contend with. And so, in my head, Barrow and Furness is this really big, impressive station that, you know, was built in, like, the, you know, or maybe expanded in, like, the 20s or so, and Sodor kind of became something that the LMS had to worry about. And so it's like there's this big station. I think there's a lot of red brick. I think it's really beautiful. And I think there's a lot of tracks. And then there's the really cool thing is you can look up the Barrow and Furness sheds. And it's like, they look a lot like the Thomas, like, Farquhar branch line sheds, except there's, like, 10 berths instead of 3. Like, it's really, really cool.
Right.
And I just like the fact of, like, you know, Gordon's, you know, the express engine, he's not always going to sleep at the big station at Tidmouth. He's going to, like, maybe sleep at Barrow every other night because who knows where he's going to end up. So that place is important to him, too. And I like the idea of Gordon sleeping in these real sheds. So that one gets me really excited because, like, when I build it, there's going to be photographs that I can hold up and be like, this is it, you know, like, they're going to match. And that's really exciting to me because it's one thing to do a set from, like, imagination. It's another thing to do it where you feel like you're almost referencing or speaking to, like, a real place. And there's a few other real places like that I really love.
Speaking of like real places and stuff and trying to replicate those in sets and stuff like that, you know what's something that, like, we should all try and do eventually?
What?
All
together?
No, like individually. We should try and make sets of, like, our house in our neighborhood and stuff, and then do a video on it.
I have actually thought about that, Henry.
And, well, here's the thing. I think it will work really good for me because I live just down the street, like I from a railroad crossing, and I see trains every day go by, like, from my window. So I could definitely, if I built that line, like, in a set, I could definitely incorporate my house in it.
Dude, you're like the Reverend Audrey growing up next to the railway.
I mean, I didn't grow up next to it. I didn't grow up
I find
next
it crazy
to it,
there's no fucking, or frickin', my bad. I find it weird that there's no crossing gates there, though. It's just track.
No, there's... Well, are you talking about my railroad crossing?
Yeah, I thought there was one with... Maybe the way I went, there was no crossing.
Yeah, no, there's, like, the one I'm at, there's crossing gates.
So what did you think, Ronnie, that people just get crashed into every day? Like, it's just like a bug on the windshield. There are no precautions in place.
Look, it happens.
That's probably Norfolk Southern's.
I mean, where I used to live, Ronnie, like, there's a crossing near the tracks there, but there's no, like, gates because those tracks aren't used. They're defunct. But
I love defunct train tracks. I'd be driving around and I see them and I'm like, man, I would love to build a set of that. You ever do that? Do that where, like, you're like driving by tracks and you're like, that'd be a really cool set.
I do actually think that sometimes, yeah. And I'll internalize it, and I might even, like, it might even subconsciously find its way into something later. Like, it's really interesting to see how somebody's influences kind of bleed into the way that they do things, and I think building sets is no exception.
Like I've had this idea, like, cause I used to, but I still do. I go on like a lot of walks and stuff on trails, and there will always be like the big forest canopies that like are like going over the pathway or whatever, right? And then I read somewhere that like in the books, Henry's Tunnel like splits down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like a little part where it opens up, and I've always imagined that part having like a big forest canopy over it, like a big like pathway or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you told me this, and I love it. The idea that like that nature kind of heals the wound in the tunnel.
Because it collapsed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
like when they were first constructing it, I think.
That's cool.
It's like a big Band-Aid for life.
Yeah. Yeah, but that is pretty. The idea that like the tunnel's broken in the middle, but it's like to kind of still cover it up and almost kind of fix that gap. The trees kind of rise up over the centuries and kind of grow to like fix that and knit together. Yeah. And there's little gaps where you can see the sky, like, and maybe that is. Are you suggesting like that is Henry's Forest, Ronnie?
Well, like, yeah, kind of, but also I just kind of like that visual. I can visualize how that would look as a set, and that's what I would want to build probably is like that specific ideal of Henry's Tunnel.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I love that.
I forgot Brio made Henry's Tunnel with like a brick wall and everything.
Yeah,
good for dude. Honestly. Brio the goat.
Yeah,
they have a good.
Brio
they have a good
cool.
Terrence.
They do.
Yeah.
Brio Henry's Tunnel. Brio. Let me inspect this for myself. Oh yeah, they did.
Yep.
It's so bald. It's mostly wood.
I mean, yeah, it's a wooden toy line. That makes sense.
I guess this is more of like a wooden railway question, but like, what's your guys' favorite like wooden railway piece to use for set like design?
Track.
Like, what is like one destination or building that always comes back?
Special engine shed.
For me, it was always like the work shed, like the double one, with the two canopies.
Yeah, like a lot of my stuff, like I use background. I use like destinations, not necessarily for like what they're intended for, like the coal station, etc. But I put them in the background as background set dressing. You know,
I really like like the coal station is great. Like the big industrial looking buildings that are general enough to kind of slip in are great. I love the diesel works like refueling pump thing, like those two big dark green barrels, you know? Like
I think I know what you're talking about.
That looks really good. Like in the background, like especially when you put all this stuff like behind like a good retaining wall, and then it all just kind of sticking up and creates kind of a skyline of industry. I really love how that looks.
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. I can see the vision.
Yeah, so I like that thing a lot. I use that a lot.
There's a lot of good, like, just general, like, wooden railway. Back when I used it, there was a lot of stuff where it was very useless on the surface, but there was also a lot of stuff that was, like, really, really cool.
Right.
If you got it in, like, the right example.
It's really interesting how, like, you can get something for like, say, Tidmouth sheds would be, like, an absolute must in a collection, but when you're building sets, I mean, you... Like, I've never really used it for that purpose just because it's so limiting. You know, it's only got 5 berths.
And you're a Railway Series boy. So
and I am a Railway Series boy.
You use, like, you know, the open or the big shed with the turntable in the shed and all that.
Yeah.
You make that stuff from scratch.
So that's also it. But even if I was, like, more of a TV series person, I think I would rebuild the sheds just because I'm not the biggest fan of how they look. I mean, the roof is flat, you know, it's not, like, right up my alley. But then, meanwhile, you've got, like, some, like, nothing, nameless destination that doesn't even represent anything, like that oil barrel thing. But I've used that way more because it's general. So, like, there's a kind of a big burden on an item to look good when it's so major. But when it's just some random thing in the background, it's a lot easier to just throw in and not worry about it. Like, you know, the coal station is, like, probably my favorite wooden railway destination. And it doesn't have to be accurate to anything. It's just, you know, it's just its own thing. It's just a cool object. You know, so, I don't know, there's something freeing about that. You know, about items that just don't really have to represent anything. And they go a lot better on sets as a result. Because, like, you can't... there's some stuff where, like, you ever notice in the show, like, they'll use, like, the side building on Knapford Station, and they'll, like, put that building, like, everywhere, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like, it is all over the place. And it's like, that's the side of Knapford Station. Like, it's really iconic. And I get that architectural style is present in a lot of places on the island, and so you're going to see a lot of arches like that, and a lot of similar roofs and colors. So it works. But also, like, that is the side of Knapford Station. And all I can think of when I see it is Knapford Station does not exist in this world right now because they're using part of it. So, like, this set is all there is right now. It kind of breaks immersion a little bit. And I guess the nice thing about general buildings that don't really correspond to anything is you can use them as many times as you want. It could even be that there's an architect who was just very prolific on the island that kept using that model. And then every time someone needs a new garage or warehouse, he's like, oh, well, I'll dust those plans off and build another one.
Yeah.
But, like, you can't put Tidmouth sheds in more than one place. Like, you can't, there's a lot of things that you can't quite get away with.
I mean, you could argue, there's the old style roundhouse, there's the deluxe roundhouse, and then the roundhouse that's actually called Tidmouth sheds. You could argue those are all like, the deluxe roundhouse actually says Tidmouth sheds on it, but I mean,
but also I always thought that thing looked more like a firehouse than anything. Like,
true, it's because of the bright, vibrant red on it. Really,
it's the red doors.
Yeah, like I literally as a kid I thought that was a firehouse, and then it took me a long time to be like, oh no, they're serious. Like, that's the sheds. And I don't mean to roast anyone who uses it, right? Like, it's also very nostalgic.
Yeah, you better watch yourself, brother.
Yeah, no, my career might be over, but I just, that thing I always, I never really recognized fully what it was until later. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's the new iteration of Tidmouth. That's like new style Tidmouth sheds. Huh.
What's like an item that you guys have for your set building that, like, not like an item you had for set building, but what's one that, like, you will never put on a set ever because it's just useless?
That's a great question.
I don't know.
It's tricky, right? Because a lot of, like, my assets for sets are also
like
part
custom.
Well, yeah, but also, like, so because of course those are all going to be useful because that's why I built them. So I guess I have to look at the ones that are just wooden railway. And then it's like, okay, well, but not all. Some of them I just own because they're cool wooden railway things, and so I don't really think of them as set fodder. But I guess what's like, one thing is I'm always on the fence about the water tower because it's an iconic wooden railway destination, and I love it.
It's just big and bulky.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, it's like I was like when I was doing a remake recently. That'll be a while till it comes out. But I needed the water tower for part of it, and I ended up using it for that purpose because I just kind of liked how it wouldn't railwayified the remake because I wanted to kind of really hammer home. It's like, this is the wooden railway version of this episode, and I liked it. I liked how it kind of brightened up the shot, and it looked really cool, but it didn't look anything like the shot composition of the real thing because those two objects could not be more different. Like an actual water tower is like a blackish brownish gray, then it's small and stout and it's like got legs to it, and then it's cylindrical, and then you've got this just enormous big like red kind of and blue and tan object that's just so bulky, and they could not be more different. The only thing they have in common is they are meant to represent the same thing. And that's just pretty wild.
Yeah, me personally, I have both of the Bachmann water towers, like the black one that's like the cylinder kind of thing, and then the one where like all the water's up at the top and then there's a hose thing. Like, I have both those. I don't have the regular wooden railway water tower. Back in my early days of filming, my early days of making YouTube videos, I had the take along one that was in like that figure 8 engine work set with Thomas. And that worked pretty good for the time being, but yeah.
I used to use, there was a take-along one that had like a little, I almost want to say it was like a charging slot for like a little battery powered.
Yeah, there was a battery-powered Thomas.
That's the one that I used to use.
I don't know what happened to that Thomas. I had that. I had the water tower. That was so cool.
You filled him up on the dome.
Yeah, I know. That's like, that led to just even more misinformation about where you fill up an engine. But
did
but
that
was a
Thomas
cool
work
thing.
good? Did that Thomas work good?
I seem to I recall it working.
I feel like.
Yeah, but I honestly don't even know what happened to mine. Like, I loved that thing, though. That was so cool.
Oh,
like, a take-along that powered itself.
Remember the smoking Thomas, the steam Thomas, the Tomy one? And that one, you actually open up the tanker thing, the tanker lid, and, like, fill it up that way with the water tower.
That was such a cool item.
I remember in the... Well, I didn't have it, but my cousin did. And I remember seeing on the box or on the manual, it says, do not fill in the funnel, like fill in the tank thing.
That's funny. Yeah, because that would be somebody's first thought.
Because I can't read.
Well, guys, I think that just about wraps up this episode. We over an hour. That's good. That's how.
Oh yeah, no, that's decent. Yeah. I think we've got a good rhythm going. I think we're going to upload a lot more frequently going forward. I appreciate people holding out for us. We've all got lives. No, Ronnie, it's not just you. I mean, it's like we've all got stuff going on, so. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I'll see how quick my turnaround is editing this one. I think I don't think I'll do much editing at all, so. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It depends on audio quality and all that. But anyway, So thanks for tuning in, folks. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back at it again with the next one. If you want to maybe make suggestions as to what our next topic should be, by all means,
Yeah, I mean, it could be what I was about to say.
Yeah, I mean, anything Thomas related, honestly.
Yep, we're always open to suggestions, stuff like that. If you guys have any ideas. Like for sets, feel free to leave those in the chat, or if you want to like build whether you're going for like the big detailed sets or stuff for filming or like big layouts, just remember to keep things one chuff at a time. Thanks for watching.
If you made it this far into the video, comment your favorite wooden railway shed.
And cut.